we have to be careful about the way we cleanse. That's probably the biggest myth, is that germs are bad. We need germs.
Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, I am delighted to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to be on your show again. The first time
Yes.
was when I was at the Gold Coast. So I was on the other
You were
side of
in
the
Byron
world.
Bay. You were
I
in,
was
By-
in Byron
we were in,
Bay. That's right. There's a
we
lot
were
of places I went that trip. But yeah, now I'm back on the other side of the world in Dallas, Texas. And so it's a pleasure to be here with you.
When we first met, we did a live podcast recording as part of the Fresh Life conference. And it was the first time that I was really immersed into understanding skin biome technology. And for me, it was a very different approach to skincare. And since I met you, when you have that bias in your brain, once you notice something, you notice it everywhere. So I
Mhm.
don't know whether it's because I was just so intrigued by our conversation on that recording, or it was that there's been an explosion in interest in biome technology. But right now, I feel like it is the hottest topic of conversation in skincare. And it's something I'd really like to demystify for the consumer. And I always say my audience is a citizen scientist,
Sure.
we're curious and we want to know that there's sound evidence-based
Mhm.
science behind new things to try. So I'd love you to start at the beginning and give us Skin Biome 101 as a starting point.
Okay, I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. So I am a geneticist, I'm a scientist, so I tend to be a little bit verbose at times, but you just stop me if I'm getting a little too technical.
I've got you.
So in a nutshell, skin biome, so basically like when I look to take care of my own skin and when I give advice to others or when I'm formulating things, I'm looking to do skin biome care versus skin care. And it's not that skin care is bad, it's that it's only a part of what we should be doing. And the way that I explain it is that just like any ecosystem on the world, whether it's the Great Barrier Reef or it's the Yellowstone National Park in the United States, there is an ecosystem where things exchange nutrients and energy and such. And so there's certain animals that eat other animals, that eat trees, that add the nitrates to the soil, which feeds the trees, which feeds the animals. And so it's this big connected web. And so just like that on your own skin and in your gut as well, you have ecosystems. And so there's gives and there's takes, and there's certain microbes that are kind of the hub of these ecosystems where unfortunately over the years, as we've increased our medicine and sanitation knowledge and habits, we've kind of gotten a little bit too far where we're over sterilizing our skin, we're over washing, we're over cleansing, we're over preserving. And what that has done is basically put a kink into that web in the ecosystem of our skin. And so we have started to form what's called dysbiosis, which is a fancy term to say there's just an imbalance in the ecosystem of the skin. And that can manifest in many ways. But in the first world countries where we're the most clean, if you want to call it clean, we actually have the most inflammatory skin disease. And it's because of this dysbiosis, because it leads to things like psoriasis, atopic dermatitis, acne even. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people have gotten past is thinking acne equals you have dirty skin. That's not what acne is. And you can actually make acne worse by over cleansing the skin. And so skin biome care, or the skin biome in general, is basically looking at how do we curate the right microbes on the skin? How do we keep the ecosystem, the environment of the skin in a way that's conducive to what we call symbiosis, which is like the opposite of dysbiosis. And basically, symbiosis would be the natural ecosystem as it's intended to be, flourishing in balance, which is very difficult to do with first world habits because everything we put on our skin, everything that we ingest seems to be chock full of things like preservative systems. And while preservative systems are great, don't get me wrong, they have helped us to have stable food sources and stable cosmetic products. We have to be a little more conscientious about how we formulate and how we compile different things. Because think about this, just like when you eat a well-balanced diet, you might want, let's say, 10 different vitamins to round out your nutrition, but you don't eat 10 different meals, one for each vitamin. Yet that's how we do skincare. we say this one has this active, this one has this active, this one has this active, and we start to pile on. But it's not just the actives that are in these topicals. It's also carbomers and preservative systems and all sorts of other things that can actually modulate the ecosystem, not necessarily for the better. And that's really where SkinBiome is becoming the forefront of dermatology, because we're now starting to realize we've done ourselves a disservice, and we're taking a step back to see how do we kind of fix this.
One of the things that after our initial conversation, and I saw you speak at Cosmeticon recently, and it was a full house, by the way. You wouldn't have been able to see because you were beaming in, but it was a full house. The level of interest is huge, and the reason is I think there's been such a lot of good education about the gut. Micro system, and how having good microbiomes in the gut can impact everything from cellular wellness to organ health to cognitive health to then obviously skin health. There's a lot of discussion about that. But then the next chapter, as you say, is taking that and looking at the biome environment of the actual skin, which is also an organ, as we know. So
Mm-hmm.
in your research, so you're not a skincare manufacturer. You have worked with skincare, and we're going to talk about that. But your studies were always just on biomes, right?
Yeah. So
So
I
Crown
do.
Laboratories is your research lab, correct?
No, actually, Crown Laboratories is a larger company that has several divisions. One division is pure skincare.
Which is where
As
you work.
Well, no, I'm the chief scientist over the entire company. Although I don't personally oversee any formulations that don't fall under the philosophy of skin biome care. But the company does sell those traditional type of topicals. It's just not what my research is on. It's not what interests me.
So tell me about your research, because then that led to quite a big innovation in skincare.
Yeah, so really, before I actually sold my company that was purely research in skin biome care, and that was back in 2019. Before that, it was purely in skin biome care, and I started that research back in 2013. I had this not run-in's not the right word, it sounds bad. I had this interaction with a scientist at UCLA, Dr. Lee, and she presented some data that was really exciting and interesting to me, because I had come from doing tissue engineering research at pretty prestigious universities where it was kind of considered cutting edge at that point. So both at Duke University and Yale University, we were really successful. And I was in the lab of Dr. Laura Nicholson, who's a well-known person in the tissue engineering field for cardio and pulmonary. And so I moved away from that field because I felt that discipline was kind of a sophisticated Band-Aid. So you could basically grow a whole organ, a perfect organ inside of a bioreactor, but if you put it back into a diseased system, it will become diseased again until you
Right.
fix the underlying condition. So that's when I was looking at ways in which we could actually use some of these methodologies that I had been trained on to address the underlying conditions by using gene or cell therapies. And this research at UCLA showed that there was a certain a certain species of microbe that was thought to have caused acne for like decades, called C. acnes. Well, at that time it was called P. acnes, or Propionibacterium acnes. And since then, scientists have renamed it and also subdivided it into three different groups, because there's such a genetic diversity between these strains within the species. And I like to use the analogy for people of the dog, the house dog. You know, the house dog is actually of the genus Canis lupus. That's actually the species, Canis lupus. And that species is the wolf. And then there's the subspecies Canis lupus, which is the gray wolf. And then there's Canis lupus familiaris, which is the house dog. And those are the same species. And even within the subspecies of Canis lupus familiaris, there's the Chihuahua, there's the Great Dane, there's the Beagle. They're all very different phenotypically. And so for us to think that in the realm of the microbiome, that just because something's in a species, it's all the same, we've learned that that's absolutely incorrect. And we have to take a step back and say, okay, so these 50 years of research that looked at one strain or two strains of the species saying it caused acne, maybe we forgot to look at the strains that are actually protective in nature. Because what Dr. Lee's research showed was that every single person that she tested, the follicles of the skin, about 90% of what was living in there was this very species of bacteria, Cutibacterium acnes. Now, there was differences in the subspecies, but they all had C. acnes, even the healthy patients. And if anything, there was slightly more C. acnes in the people with healthy skin versus the acneic skin. And that's really where it kickstarted my research into SkinBiome, because I realized there's so much that we thought we knew that we don't know. We need to start teasing apart this web of the ecosystem of our skin and seeing how what those things secrete can do to benefit you and I on a daily basis.
I'm wondering if you could break this down even further, because one of the things that was really interesting at the conferences, the dermatology conference in Melbourne and also the one in Sydney, and I think the reason the physicians were so interested in your research is that, personalized medicine, personalized skincare is really what everyone is excited about as the future of skincare. And biome-based skincare is probably the closest thing that comes to a generic umbrella for personalized skincare at the moment, because it's allowing your skin, your own skin, under the right conditions to personalize its own healing journey and to do what it needs for you.
Right.
So I'm wondering if you can explain what happens if you use biome skincare versus the traditional path that we've been taught to follow, which is choosing, as you said, singular ingredients to perform certain tasks. Because when you do that, it's a very different environment that you're creating in the skin, as you said, but
Right.
it's also a very different and almost blanket outcome, because it doesn't allow for any individualization. Am I correct in my understanding?
You are correct. And I would say to take that even further is that, in medicine, concentration is everything, right? You can have somebody respond very good to one concentration, a separate person respond very poor to that concentration. And so it amazes me how we think that, some of our cosmetics that we have, we've really pushed the limit of how high we can get with these actives. And we think that that's a good thing. But in biology, more does not equal better. And that's something where when you're talking about personalized medicine, that's really where skin biome care comes in, because what you're trying to do there is say, okay, you want your body's ecosystem to balance itself out because you want it to cater to that particular person's needs. So if you produce a lot of oils, you'll also feed certain microbes, which will then secrete certain things. And then it kind of is a circular type of thing that you want to be in balance. I use the analogy of there's a lot of people on kicks for glutathione. It's become a sexy thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar,
Oh,
but
yeah.
glutathione, yeah, it's a very potent antioxidant. It's the body's kind of master antioxidant that we make ourselves. The problem is that most people don't realize that you can have too much antioxidant. It actually, so we talk about oxidative damage, but if you put
Yes.
too much antioxidant, you get what's called reductive damage, which is the opposite to oxidative damages. So there's this, it's a system of balances in our body. Our biology wants balance, and there's this redox, which is reduction and oxidation. It goes back and forth because different parts of our biology need either reduction or oxidation to work. I mean, think about it. We need oxygen to live, so we need some of those species. We need things like nitric oxide, which is a free radical. It's causes oxidative damage in large amounts. But we need small amounts of it for certain things to function. And with skin biome care, that's really the crux of it, is that if you look at what we know about what makes up the ecosystem of the skin, there are certain microbes that basically are in the center of this huge web, and so for instance, there was a research article that just came out. I think it was actually this month. A review article. And so basically looked at dozens and dozens of research publications that looked at microbiome in different disease states like rosacea, acne, psoriasis, atopic dermatitis, sebderm. And what they found was very interesting to me, that in all of the cases of all these types of inflammatory diseases, there was one microbe species that was lower than in healthy skin, and that was C. acnes.
Oh,
And that to me was fascinating because the research I've been doing for the last decade, if you go into my office here in Dallas, you can see on the wall, I draw like this big map. And in the center of this map is the species, because I've been learning about how the balance is working. And one of the things that people think is, we need to kill what's causing the problem. But it's not about killing anything. It's about balancing it. Because, so for instance, Staphylococcus epidermidis, which is a type of Staphylococcus. When we think of staph, we think of Staph aureus, like staph infection.
yes.
And these are all different species of Staphylococcus, which is a genus. But Staphylococcus epidermidis is thought to be what we call a commensal. So it kind of lives on the skin, does its thing. But the problem is that staph species, when the C. acnes is not present, they overgrow. And then the pH raises of the skin. And then what happens is this particular species secretes what's called a protease, which digests proteins. And the little chains that keep the dead skin cells on our skin, they digest them. But the problem is when you have too much activity of that protease, you over disquame the skin. So you push off too much of it. So it'd be like getting too high of a percentage of a peel, and you end up with an impaired barrier, which leads to things like atopic dermatitis. The
Can
C.
we talk
acnes,
about, yeah, sorry, go ahead. You complete your
sure,
sentence.
sure. The C. acnes, though, it actually secretes peptides that keep staph in check. So it doesn't kill them necessarily. It just keeps their numbers down because it reduces the pH, secretes certain peptides. It also keeps things like Malassezia in check. And they all kind of balance each other out because those other microbes actually have anti-C. acnes molecules that keep it in check. And so they're all keeping each other in check. And so the C. acnes reduces that protease activity and allows for proper desquamation of skin. So that's really kind of the idea, is that you're trying to get all the things that these microbes do. You have things that do what retinoids do. You have things that do what vitamin C does. You have things that do what salicylic acid does. They're all there. It's just about, are they in balance?
Which is really interesting because what you're saying makes sense, that if we create an environment where the skin does what it's meant to do, it will do what it's meant to do without having to do any active ingredients. Now, I want to tell you a funny story.
Okay.
You have partnered with a skincare brand called BIOJUVE and put your the result of your research and the molecules of your biome technology into a skincare brand. And after I met you, I was super curious to try it. So when it was launched, I was sent the range. And I very rarely stop everything and use an entire range from woe to go. But I was so curious, and the science seemed really sound. But cognitively, I was having so much struggle letting go of my actives. And I said to the company, "Oh, so where does my C and retinoid fit into all this?" And they said to me, "Look, this the BioJuve is meant to be used by itself as a complete program. You won't need actives." And I'm like, "What do you mean you won't need actives? Like that doesn't make sense to me." So anyway, I made a commitment to go with it. And as the PR who sent me the kit said, she goes, "You know what? Think of it as a skin reset. Do it for 6 weeks. And then if you really want to, you can reintroduce actives." So it was kind of foreign to me at first. But my skin loved it. My skin has loved it. And I'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like a good hair day every day, but for my skin, because
That's great.
my skin is skinning, for lack of a better expression. Ever since
Mhm.
I've just followed a very simple protocol. So it's the cleanser, and then there's a serum and a moisturizer for the day. And then in the evening, I've actually got because I'm filming from home today, not the office. So I've got this. So this is my serum, and then this is an activator. So you mix the two. One's a spray, one's a serum. That's my nighttime protocol. And during the day, I just put an SPF 50. But so you can, as you can imagine, the level of complication of my skincare routine is like so much less than it used to be, because I had like an Olympic skincare routine. And I haven't had any irritation. I've had no redness. I think my skin tone is pretty even too. Like I've got
Mhm.
makeup on to record, but I think in general, um, what I've noticed is the hydration level is great. My sensitivity is almost none. Um, I didn't have a period of adjustment either where I had breakout when I switched to the range, which sometimes I do when I change to a new skincare protocol. So for me, it's been a really interesting little petri dish of my own skin to see. Yeah, look what happens when you let your skin.
Absolutely. I think that's really, you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to the philosophy, which is less is more sometimes. And it's letting your own biology do its thing, which is going to actually help you to have better skin because it's the way that your skin is intended to work. Now, that's not to say that other people that use other products won't have good, outcomes as well. It's just that it's like you mentioned earlier, is that it doesn't, not everything fits everybody. And when you try to shove a certain percentage of an active onto everybody's skin, you're going to have people that react okay. You're going to have people that, do well. You have people that don't do well at all and actually makes their skin worse. The real kind of uh, technology, while we do have a specific Xycrobe technology that we've put into that line, the real technology is about making sure that you don't stop at just adding this probiotic strain to your skin, but that you make sure you care for it. Because these strains, just like any ecosystem, the animals can't do anything if they're dead. They have to be alive to, do their thing. And so these microbes have to engraft into the skin and do their thing. And I think I forgot to finish my anecdote with the glutathione. But with glutathione, while it's a great antioxidant, it can be too much if you overdo it and you get reductive damage. So the better way to do it is actually provide the body with the precursor to
Yes.
glutathione, which is N-acetylcysteine. And N-acetylcysteine, the body will then use up whatever it wants and make glutathione and then spit out the rest. So you don't end up with reductive damage. You end up with a really rich antioxidant as your body needs, as it should be balanced. And that's really, I think, the number one thing that we've lost is this idea of let your body decide what it needs versus trying to shoehorn in certain actives at certain levels.
I'm going to ask a question for the dummies, namely for myself. Are you saying that there's no need for me to ever use actives again? Because again, I've still got this cognitive training of like 30 years of being an adult female that says, but at some point you're going to want your vitamin C and you're going to want your peptides and you're going to want your retinol. How
Sure.
does can you use the range with actives if you're still wedded to them?
Well, the answer is, I tell the people at night when you're putting the live microbes on, don't use anything else simply because we can't control what are the ingredients in these other products that you're mixing. And if there's antimicrobial ingredients, you're just going to kind of waste your time and money. And,
Yes, I can understand.
and so it makes no sense. So I say, just give your night to skin biome care. In the daytime, you can then experiment a little bit and I use the analogy of, I'm using a lot of analogies because that's what we did in the book. And so I've already pre-thought these, but I use the analogy of your diet. When you go on a detox diet where you're trying to like get your health in order because you have IBS or something, you don't keep everything that you already eat and add celery. What you do is you get rid of everything you eat. You find a nutritionist and they tell you exactly what foods to eat. You get your health in order, and then you start introducing back some of the things that you love once you're healthy again. And you find out a nice balance of, that detox diet with the stuff that you used to eat. But the thing is, you will never go back to the diet you had because then you're just going to end up with the same condition that you had before. And so if you have perfectly healthy skin, there's no reason for you to change. And I mean, I would say, of course, I would recommend you do a skin biome care. But the thing is, if you're I'm sorry, I just knocked my camera. But if you're doing something and your skin is receiving it quite well, if you're normative, if you're healthy, Especially if you're doing skin biome care, there's no reason for other actives. But just like in medicine, you take medicine when you have a reason to take medicine. So with these actives, you use them when you have a reason to use them. So if you have melasma and the skin biome care isn't particularly taking care of all the melasma, then you might take an active that is for melasma specifically because you need something because you have a issue that can't be covered by normative functioning. You have an abnormal functioning. So that's when I would say you would add your actives back in when you have a reason to. So I tell people the key thing with all topical use is being thoughtful and intentional with every product you use. If you don't understand why you're using it and what's in it, you probably shouldn't be using it.
Gosh, that's such good advice. That's so thoughtful. And I'm wondering if we could talk about the book, going since you've raised the book, which is such a great gift because, as you said, it's full of analogies. It helps you reconceptualize what it is to have good skin, and good skin, like you were saying with the diet example, is when your body is functioning at optimum levels in the way that it was designed to do. So it's funny you should bring up a diet too, because from Monday, I am starting an anti-inflammatory protocol, and it was also from a doctor that I heard speak at Cosmeticon.
Okay.
And I was so inspired because I'd had my own experience with using the BIOJUVE skincare and resetting the biomes of my skin. And I got such a good response. And I thought, well, I've done this on the outside. I might try it on the inside. So I'm starting, and it's a personalized nutrition plan where you kind of set a baseline, which is quite, basic, and has eliminated the things that might be triggering, inflammation or indigestion for me. And then I take a supplement that helps with the gut microbiomes.
Mhm.
And that's all I take it. So all of my other supplements stop. I just take this one microbiome supplementation and then reintroduce food. But you're right. Most likely I'll never go back to the way I ate before because the idea is that you will feel so good. Your body and your skin and your energy levels will be reset in such a way that you go, well, why would I go back?
Absolutely. I think most people also don't realize the connection between the gut and the skin and the brain. Everything's connected by your circulatory system and the immune cells that they have little signals that they give out about whether your body's inflamed or not. And when your skin is inflamed, that affects your gut. When your gut's inflamed, it affects your skin. And so I bet you with this diet, you'll probably even see better results on your skin because if you lower systemic inflammation, it's all connected. So I think it's very wise, and I also think people don't realize that part of maybe something that I should have said at the very beginning, which is if you have trillions of microbes that live on your skin, but also in your gut, and these microbes are secreting things 24 hours a day. They never stop secreting things, but what they secrete is not always the same. It depends on the environment that they're in. If they're like struggling, they're going to put out some things that may not be great for you because they're trying to save themselves. But if they're happy and you're giving them the right ingredients, then they're going to use those to make things that'll help you. Like these microbes make things like short chain fatty acids that are very healthy for you, like propionic acid and butyric acid and acetic acid. These things make you very healthy. It's why people take apple cider vinegar shots sometimes because that type of short chain fatty acid is super healthy for the body. But you have to think about when you put a topical on your skin, how's it affecting the microbes? Because the topicals you put on maybe once a day, twice a day, but those microbes are there all the time. So whatever they secrete is going to affect your skin way more than any topical is going to. So you better take care of them. And the same in your gut.
I read a really interesting article about why you shouldn't go and have surgery, cosmetic surgery, or any surgery really, in a country that you don't live in, because the
Mm.
microbiomes and the microbes are foreign to your system. And so that one aspect alone can modify your healing because you're in an environment where the microbiome is upset. And I thought, well, that kind of makes sense because um, you do get used to a certain diet, certain air, certain water, um, and that would be different in by country to country. You know, it's the same as if you go overseas and you eat a lot of foreign food or drink water. It can upset your tummy because it's all a different um, microbes, and microbiome is upset by it. So it kind of made sense to me, and then it made sense to me that your skin, if you, whenever you take it out of that symbiosis and that happy place, uh, by changing the environment too much and introducing things or pathogens or environments that are foreign to it, it's going to take some time to adjust.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we get acne when we're teenagers. It's why we sometimes babies have acne, is because when you dramatically change your environment, so you can think there's probably no more dramatic of a change of a womb to the real world, which is
Yeah.
filled with bacteria from top to the bottom. So babies will get this acne because their skin will react. Not everybody does, though. And with teenage acne, it's the same. Some people get away scot-free, which I hate them. I'm just kidding. I don't hate them. But, it's like a lot of us went through acne as a teenager because when your body hits puberty, you start secreting a lot of oils, and you also become a little more inflammatory because of the um, uh, the hormones. And so, but all that oil and stuff changes your skin's ecosystem dramatically. And so you end up fostering more lipophilic bacteria and fungus, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing. But the fact is, your body's not used to it. So it goes into a little bit of shock and overreacts. And that's what you're talking about going to other countries, is that it's not that those things will kill us. It's that if we're not used to it, the body's innate immune system says, hold on a second. I don't know who you are. I need to do a security check on you before I'm going to let you live here. You know?
Because the fish have swum in different seas,
Yeah,
the cows have eaten different grass.
that's
So
right.
that's just the stuff you're ingesting. And then the air is different. The pollution levels are different. The water is different. And it's
Mhm.
true. I always take, a gut supplement, and I am careful. And I thought, well, that makes perfect sense. So it does make sense that creating a a more optimized environment is going to be good in skincare. In your book, Rebooting the Biome, you do kind of turn the skincare idea on its head a bit. And I'm wondering if you could do a little bit of myth busting of what we're so addicted to thinking that
Sure.
you want us to challenge as we're thinking about our skin into the future.
I mean, one of the things I would say is we have to be careful about the way we cleanse, because I don't know about you, but I was brought up that you want to be squeaky clean. There was like even advertisements and such of, you need to be, you're not fully clean unless you're zestfully clean, or whatever brand, was using. That was the slogan back in the day. And, people use the word like, oh, I feel squeaky clean. The thing is, if your skin is actually squeaking when you rub it, it means you've gone way overboard, and that can lead to serious implications as to your health, not just your skin but your overall body, because it is all connected. And the biggest thing is, like, there is kind of this re-emerging trend, because several years back the FDA of the United States basically put out a mandate that people need to stop putting antimicrobial stuff into like soaps and such, because they were causing a disservice to their consumers. They were using it for psychological reasons, because we think germs are bad, and that's probably the biggest myth, is that germs are bad. We need germs. For a century, we've studied germ-free animals where we actually artificially. I won't. You can read it in the book. It's a little bit gruesome how they make these animals, but these animals are bred specifically to be completely free of microbes. And while there are some things that are positive, such as there's some research that shows that they can have scarless wound healing, the problem is they have so many deficits. They have neurological issues, they have GI issues, they have developmental issues. They don't live as long typically. And so this is one of those things where we need these microbes to actually function in this world, because this world is not sterile. So we need that protection of this balance. And so germs are not bad. It's when, there are some germs that are bad, like Ebola. I don't think that's ever going to be helpful for anybody. But, most of the things that are supposed to live in our bodies, that tend to live in our bodies, are there for a reason. And when it comes to over washing and over cleansing, I would say there's a trend that's starting to reemerge about, and it happened during the pandemic,
Oh,
where
right.
people started to overuse sanitizers and such. And right now, there was one particular sanitizing agent that's very useful called hypochlorous acid. And hypochlorous acid is it's basically very similar to bleach, but it's about 100 times more potent than bleach. And the great thing about hypochlorous acid, as opposed to bleach, is that it actually dissociates into salt very quickly. So it's very potent, but then it goes away, so it becomes inert very quickly. So it becomes difficult to formulate with and stuff for that reason. But companies have started to put out what they're calling stabilized forms of hypochlorous acid, and encouraging people to use them on a daily basis. I think that that's not a great idea. Hypochlorous acid and any other sterilizing agent, any broad spectrum antimicrobial, should be used when it's necessary, like if you're about to have surgery or if you have a condition where you need to reset, get rid of everything and start from scratch. But doing it every day can lead to further dysbiosis, because the thing is, just like any antiseptic, you're not getting rid of the flora, you're just diminishing them, and they're going to bounce back. And sometimes when they bounce back, they do it in a vengeful way, and where your body's not, it's not going to be great for your body. So we've had people that try to do skin biome care with mixing in hypochlorous acid and have had bad experiences. And that's why, because you're giving mixed signals to your body. You're saying
Oh,
you want these microbes
so are they using it on their face or just on their hands and they're getting bad?
on their face.
Why?
That's
Why
my
do people
question.
why do people
That's
do
my
such a
question.
strange thing? I will say I was so pleasantly surprised with the BIOJUVE cleanser, because I thought, "Oh, here we go. It's going to be a milk cleanser, and I'm gonna have to use it 5 times to get all my makeup off." But it wasn't. It was like a creamy, liquidy, foaming cleanser. It's actually one of my favorite things from the range to use, funnily enough. And, but it's super gentle, and my skin feels not squeaky clean at all, but it feels very clean. And the only other cleanser that I would use is I might use a micellar water for my eye
Mhm.
makeup to remove.
Yep.
But on my face, I don't need anything else. I only need one cleanse. My skin feels great, and it feels ready and prepped to do my serum.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly what we. If you notice, we don't even. I asked for them not to name it a cleanser, but they call it conditioning cleanse, because I wanted to make sure that
Conditioning.
it was.
I agree with you. Yep.
Yeah, it
It's
was more
really
for the
good.
conditioning than it was for the cleaning of it. And so you do have some surfactants and emulsifiers to help to break up some of the surface oil. But most of what the intention is there is that you want your skin ecosystem to be prepped to be conducive to the health and balance. That's what that's for. It's to get off the excess makeup and pollution and stuff, but to leave the ecosystem relatively untouched.
So that's a great insight from the book. What's another great insight that you think we should remember as we're navigating skincare and potentially considering moving away from just actives and thinking about the ecosystem of our skin as a priority?
Well, I would say, one that I think most people need to be wary of is that, as you mentioned earlier, there is kind of a boom in people interested in this space. It's not that they are just starting, because about 10 years ago, there started to be companies that were trying to capitalize on the gut probiotic trend. And it's persisted where they're continuing to use things like lactobacillus strains that you find in gut probiotics. And they're putting it in skincare. They'll put the ferments in skincare. And really, what consumers need to realize is that just because something has a label probiotic does not make it probiotic. And that's covered in the book, because the reason why that is that just because something is probiotic in the gut doesn't make it probiotic for the skin. because a probiotic has to be able to survive and live in the area in which it's probiotic in. And a gut microbe doesn't necessarily have the ability to live and function on the skin. So lactobacillus has very little real estate, if any, on the skin because it's not the right conditions for those microbes. The
So
gut
what
is a great.
strain is correct? So what strain
So
do you recommend
for the skin or for the gut?
for the skin?
For the skin, it's going to be of the species. There's a couple of different microbes that I think are worth considering. There's Cutibacterium acnes, but you want the right strain, which is different than species. So the one that I work with is it's of a subspecies called C. acnes defendens, kind of like you're defending the skin. And that is the subspecies that I would say you should look for absolutely, because C. acnes is the most prolific microbe of the skin, especially the sebaceous areas like the face. And so you want to make sure you're curating the right strain because there are some strains that are not so great in the C. acnes subspecies. And so you can curate the right ones. Also, there's Staph epidermidis, but again, that's a species. So you have to look for the right strains. And we haven't yet landed on the exact strains that we would recommend for those, nor are they available. So right now, unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of offerings in the market for probiotic skin strains. A lot of the stuff you find with the postbiotic labels are all gut bacteria because that's those are the bacterium that the industry's already got infrastructure to make because they're used in dairy products.
Wow.
There is no skin infrastructure yet. We're the
This is
first
what
ones to
kind of
actually put
makes
in
me
infrastructure.
crazy. This is what makes me crazy is because you get excited about a new technology, but you do have to be careful, and it's largely unregulated, right?
Oh,
So,
yes.
uh, so you're kind of hoping for the brand or the company or the expert who's spruiking it to give you that insight. Because unless I asked that question, I would never have known. It would never have occurred to me. It would never have
Yeah.
occurred to me.
Well, that's why I wrote the book. That's why I went to Dr. Day and we've been friends for a long time. And I said to her, because she was one of the first cheerleaders when I started this research. She was very interested and she's been with me the whole time, kind of listening to my theories and, changing the way you can listen to her. She'll tell you herself, she's changed the way she practiced medicine because of this research.
I
And
absolutely love and recommend her content so much. It
Mhm.
is so sober. She is so informative. She's my actual Instagram girl crush. She is my favorite cosmetic medicine doctor uh, on Instagram.
Yeah,
She's so knowledgeable, and
and
I
she's a
have
good person
noticed.
too. Yeah,
Well, I can't
she's
wait
a
to meet
great
her.
person in real life.
And I saw the other day that she's Iranian, and I'm Iranian too, and
Mhm.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, she is. She's a very interesting person. If you haven't gotten to know her, hopefully at some point you will, because she's her life story is quite interesting, and some of the anecdotes in the book that she writes about herself is very interesting. But that was the whole reason that we wrote the book was because there's so much misinformation out there. There's so much and we're not just talking about to the consumers, even physicians don't know a lot of this stuff because they're taught in medical school old science and they're never taught anything different because they're focused on the clinical aspect. They're not really scientists. Most physicians aren't really scientists. They're clinicians. And so we felt
That's
that,
good that you've made that distinction. I think that's a really interesting observation and distinction. Thank you.
well, yeah, and it's true. There are some medical doctors who are also research scientists, but most of them are not. Most of them, you can think of it, where the research scientists are the ones that actually do the research and come up with the therapeutic drugs and molecules. It's the clinicians that learn how to use them best, because they're the ones that implement those
Yeah.
things. And so, but we knew that there's a lot of misconceptions in the market and in the world about cleanliness and sterility and microbes and probiotics. And so we thought this is the best way for us to educate people is by writing this book and getting the word out there and make it fun to read, so that it's not just a textbook. Because frankly, if I had written it myself, it would have been more of like a textbook. And that's why I pulled Doris in because Doris knows how to digest a little bit better than I do as far as the technical stuff. But yeah, so that's really in a nutshell kind of where I think I agree with you. Most of us as consumers, we're not aware of all this because we don't have time to be experts in everything. None of us
No,
do,
we
you
don't. We
know.
don't. And that's the whole idea of my show is to bring in the experts to have the conversation so that we can better self-advocate, whether we're advocating for ourselves when we're at with our cosmetic physician, or if we're picking up a new cleanser or whatever, just to have that expert information so that we can at least even in our own minds challenge the status quo. I'm wondering if I could ask you something. We've talked a lot about acne and biome skincare being a very effective way to reset the conditions of the skin to kind of take care of itself and do what it's meant to do for acneic skin. But I'm wondering if you could talk to regenerative and anti-aging skin and, specifically postmenopausal or perimenopausal skin where there is a lot of change both internally and externally. And how does biome skincare fit into the changes of that phase of life?
Yeah, so it's unfortunate that men and women age differently in the sense that, when you hit menopause, you have a pretty big cliff that the hormones go down. Where with men, it does happen, but it's a way more gradual transition. And that's manifested in skin health quite alarmingly. So if you look at the thickness of a man's skin around the same age as a woman who hits menopause, the woman's skin is way thinner overall. And part of what that is that also they start to lose the ability to secrete the oils of the skin, which are heavily driven by the androgens that our hormones, which are our hormones, I guess. And so one of the things that has been noticed is that older skin tends to have less lipophilic microbes like the C. acnes we talked about, like Malcesia, but it also has less staph epidermidis, has more diversity, which people have thought in years past equal better health, but we're now finding out that's not necessarily the case on the skin. And we would not think that the skin is better health as we get older. We think it's not as good health. And so we were trying to go back in time and we want to be more like we are when we're younger. So part of the theory is we produce less oils. So therefore we have less of these microbes that have all these benefits that we've been talking about. So if we curate and restore those microbes, can we restore that ecosystem that gives us that youthful appearance and helps our skin to basically stave off a little bit of the aging a little longer? Because we're going to all age eventually. It's just about aging the best way that your physiology can. And so what we do know is that the species C. acnes is in the scientific literature has been shown to actually cause the sebaceous glands to secrete more oils. So the real question is, in a person that is postmenopausal, can we show evidence that these microbes actually cause them to secrete oils again, like they've stopped doing? And if you supplement these microbes that you've lost, can that help to get that cycle back going? Now, you'll probably have to continue to supplement those microbes and that oil and such, but can we restore the youthfulness of the skin? And it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, is once you need a certain active, then it makes sense to use that active. So when you hit menopause, would it make sense that you need to restore some of the microbes that you've lost because of the loss of oil, which is a kind of a chicken and the egg thing? You want the oils being caused by the microbes, but you need the microbes to cause the oil. So it's kind of that supplementation that is going to give you a better outcome.
Yeah, because to me that seems like that's quite an interesting thing to consider because everything changes. So it makes sense that the microbiome changes of the skin as well.
It
And
does.
certainly you notice it, when well beyond menopause, but in aged skin. So, you sit down with your grandma and you look at her skin and it, looks different. It smells different. It
Mhm.
feels different.
Mhm.
And you have to think, that must be more than just, it must have something to do with the microbiome of the skin as well.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of evidence that shows that in older population, there is a pretty significant shift in the skin microbiome and in the gut as well. But the real kind of opportunity here is, can we modulate that? And by modulating the microbiome, can we modulate the aging process? We're at the infancy of finding out the answer to that, but the research that we did with the products that we talked about, we did a clinical study in women that a lot of them were postmenopausal. And the results we got were quite interesting because they benefited quite nicely from this augmentation. But that was only 8 weeks of use. And so it'd be interesting to see with more persistent use, the types of phenotypical changes that we would see.
I'm curious if you could share with us, what do you think is the role of pathogens, genetics, epigenetics, and the skin biome? And what can we do through skincare, through lifestyle to protect it and to create an environment where we can give ourselves the best chance of aging well?
Yeah, so this is also another interest of mine is longevity. There's a lot of research that was put out the last few years about certain supplements that lead to these family of genes called sirtuins that allow for us to remove the senescent cells from our body because as we age, there's this weird phenomena, and it's actually aging is quite interestingly tied to the same type of mechanisms that cancer is tied to. And it's no doubt, or it's no surprise why we tend to get more cancers as we age, because we always have cancers, and our immune system just knows how to get rid of them in an efficient way. And so I shouldn't say always, but often in our lives, we probably have cancer cells that our body gets rid of. It's when our body's immune system fails to recognize certain things, certain signals. And so senescence is basically when a cell has reached its kind of final hours or days and it starts becoming more inflammatory and it has signals. We have T helper cells that actually know to get rid of these senescent cells. They call these macrophages, come get rid of them. There's a problem though that as we age, they start to think, oh, this is normal. And they start to not get rid of them like they used to. And so therefore you start to accumulate them and, senescence leads to more inflammation. Inflammation leads to diseases like cancer. And so that's where with skin, we're starting to study whether or not certain microbes can actually help to modulate the expression of these sirtuin genes. So for instance, the strains that I work with in my lab, the XYCM42 and XYCW1, which are these strains of C. acnes defendans, we found that they can actually upregulate things like sirtuin-1 in order to actually, that particular work was done in a petri dish, basically, or a cell culture dish. We have yet to actually translate that into seeing whether or not that happens in vivo or in the person's actual body. But it's interesting enough to start us asking questions such as, if somebody is, let's say a woman is postmenopausal and she sees a dramatic decrease in these species that are seen to upregulate sirtuins, could that be tied to this accumulation that starts to happen in the skin? And by supplementing these microbes back, could we therefore start to rid the body of more of these senescent cells? And so we're still at the infancy of answering that question, but they are nonetheless research experiments that we're doing right now as we speak in our labs.
I'm wondering if you could also speak to, if you are interested in this journey of microbiome and resetting the way your body functions
Mhm.
internally, externally, would it be beneficial to embark on a skin biome treatment program at the same time as modifying what you're ingesting?
I think that that would be smart, but what I would say is just know yourself, know whether or not you can tolerate all those changes all at once. What I would say is, again, we go back to what we said before, do all of it thoughtfully and intentionally. Make sure you got your physician looking at blood tests to make sure that what you're doing makes sense. Because there are some diets out there as well as skin regimens that people would market to, but aren't the healthiest for you. So you need to make sure that what you're doing actually has some legitimate basis by which you should do them. But there is absolutely no reason why you can't undergo a skin biome a reset at the same time as a gut microbiome reset. I think that actually would be very healthy to do. I guess the only thing I would say is you'll never really know which is the most beneficial if you do them at the same time versus one after the other. But does it matter? If you get benefit, you get benefit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I started my skin reset first and I'm doing my gut reset second. So I've got some anecdotal evidence on my skin reset. So I will keep on going. But going back to my question with regards to introducing actives, if and I just want to just summarize. I think you said that keep the night system of the biome program pure. Don't mix anything with it. So stick to my BioJuve serum and activator and cleanser,
Mhm.
and that would be my night program. And then during the day, if I wanted to introduce anything else, would I still use the biome serum, or I would just use the cleanser, the active, and the biome moisturizer, or would I not do that? Can you not mix them? Because
Well,
I don't want to
it comes
waste my
down
biome skincare.
it comes down to really what you're trying to accomplish, because the products that are made in the BioJuve regimen in the morning is mostly to protect what you just did all night. So you're basically putting on a barrier. So the creams that are made for the daytime have a film former that is traditionally used in sunscreens to help uniformity of the zinc oxide. But these film formers actually prevent preservatives from, like, your makeup from getting down any further. So
Ah,
that's their utility. So if you are properly moisturized and you don't wear a whole lot of makeup, you probably don't have any necessary reason that you have to use the daytime products. But if you tend to wear makeup and you are going to be putting things on your skin that might have antimicrobials and such, if you want to prevent the dysbiosis, you should probably use products that are going to be compatible with the biome and also protect the biome from other preservatives and stuff. So it's really up to the user and kind of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
so talking about the most popular things, so it might be vitamin C or vitamin A. Um, and the reason I would say you would use the vitamin C is for discoloration and
Mhm,
a uniformity of pigment. The
mhm.
vitamin A, you might want to reintroduce it for wrinkle depth, for skin smoothness, skin texture.
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is how would it work together? Because I guess now I feel even more excited about biome technology. Uh, but I know that I'm still trained in my brain to want to at some point reintroduce actives, and I don't want to get it wrong.
Right. Well, if you're using a vitamin C for tyrosinase inhibition for melanin production, you basically have to put it on naked skin because otherwise it won't do that. It has to get to the skin cells. If you're using it for antioxidant purposes, you don't really, it doesn't matter where you put it as long as it's on top because, it'll still be an antioxidant. But most people that are using it for skin lightening and such, you would want to cleanse your face and then put it on immediately because otherwise the oils that your body produces will inhibit that from being accepted into the skin. That being said, vitamin C is a great molecule. Ascorbic acid is a great molecule. Your body needs it and wants it. The problem is, what else is in that serum? That's the thing that you need to watch out for. Is it's not the vitamin C that could be the issue. It's the other things in that is a preservative or anti microbials that might be in there. So that's where you have to use a little bit of elbow grease and do some homework to look at what's the inky list say, and do all these look like they might be compatible with a balanced microbiome. And so if you see things like a lot of high, it's hard because the problem with the way we do consumer products is that you don't have to put the levels. So
Okay.
there's certain preservative systems that could be great and very compatible at certain levels, but then if you go a little higher, it can be completely bad and cause dysbiosis. The problem is we don't get the insight into what levels these topicals have. So that's why I say you do your skin biome reset and then you slowly introduce things in to see if they're compatible. And if you don't have any problem, then you can move on to your next thing and say, okay, I've added my vitamin C, seem to be doing well. So now let's look into our vitamin A if I need it and see if I can find one that's compatible as well. I know that there are
This is
some,
so
yeah,
crazy making. I mean, you have to excuse me for saying that, but it's crazy making. We just don't have that level of expertise to navigate. this. So I feel like you and Dr.
Yeah.
Day need to write another book, and you need to add some compatible products to the BIOJUVE range
Well,
for us when we're ready to like integrate some other things into it.
no, and you're not the first person. I mean, from the very get-go, people, even when we put the book out, people said, well, you didn't tell us a lot of products that we should use. And I said, well, that's because there are tens of thousands of products out there, and I can't test all these products. But
Mm.
what I can do is tell you what to look out for and what to look for. That's why I formulated and invented a skin biome care line, not because I was looking to become a billionaire, and trust me, I'm not becoming one. But it was basically because I saw there was a dearth of options out there. And so my goal is to have that every skincare brand out there is going to eventually have a slew of products that meet this requirement. And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are paying attention, and I think companies are paying attention. I know companies are paying attention to what we're doing. And I'm hoping in the next few years, you're going to see a lot of different offerings that can be compatible because we're all speaking the same language and stopping the kind of wool that's been they're trying to pull over our eyes that, you need 15 different things in the day, 15 things at night, because you really don't. And I think that once we learn about how to best curate and care for our biome, it's all there already. We just need to make it more balanced.
Well, that seems to be a perfect full stop for this conversation. And I'm really excited again for my own little experiment on my own skin to have your excellent science confirm um, the experiment that I'm conducting. And I want to thank you so much. And I would love for you to keep me in mind as you do stumble across, and you do test products, and you
Okay.
do come across what products and what brands are compatible with your system, because I think that would be so useful to share. And I would genuinely look from my own experience. This is not a sponsored message, but I would say that if you're curious about resetting your skin, you might want to consider resetting the biome of your skin as a place to start. So, Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, thank you so much for being on the show. It was wonderful to connect with you again, and I look forward to having you on the show in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and have a wonderful evening.